So, good morning. I'm Alan Gray. I'm the CEO of the Irish Association of Youth Orchestras. Thank you very much for the invitation to come here and speak to you this morning. So as an organisation, we're primarily a networking, community building and resource organisation for youth orchestras. But we also engage in lots of activities. So we run a festival of youth orchestras annually at the National Concert Hall. We run national level ensembles, including a youth baroque orchestra and a symphonic wind ensemble. And our latest development actually is we've started a youth participation program. So obviously young people participate in what we do already because they play music. This is for youth voice and the elevation of the youth voice, because I've been involved with this organisation quite a long time, over 20 years, mostly as an employee. And the people who started it always talked about the extra musical benefits, the social benefits, the self-development benefits for young people. But we never built those in at the foundation. We always focused on the music and kind of left the rest happen. So we've got a youth participation project in an ongoing sense, which is really has transformed us, or is transforming us, from a youth music organisation to a youth work organisation that works through music. So I'm very glad to have the opportunity to speak here today, because it has been 20 odd years involved with European networks, and actually I've spent quite a lot thinking about it to end up with a page of scrappy notes. But actually I've learned an awful lot, and I've actually learned more again by rethinking about it. So I'll tell you some of those things. In the networks I've been part of, so initially the European Association of Youth Orchestras would have been in the early 2000s. That merged with the European Amateur Orchestra Network in 2009 and became the European Orchestra Federation, of which I joined the board in 2012 and put in 9 years as the treasurer. Whilst there, I was nominated to stand for election to the International Music Council, which is a world body under UNESCO. And so I sat on that board for 2 years. And through that as well, then the International Music Council is actually a small organisation that is supported by the European Music Council by and large, and by European funding. So in thinking about today, you were said, emphasise the inherent values and opportunities associated with involvement. So I started thinking about values, and of course the words European values occurred to me. And I had to cheat and ask ChatGPT to tell me what those were, because after 20 years of involvement with European networks, I didn't really know. So I have a whole list of them here. I'm not going to read through them, but I'm going to focus in on 3 of them, which are cultural diversity, environmental stability, and peace and conflict resolution. So I'm going to look at the values and how my interaction in Europe and how my future interactions in Europe sort of match those. So in terms of cultural diversity, I'm just actually going to talk about culture and an aspect of culture. My personal working definition of culture is everything that we teach and learn socially and everything that flows from that. So I see the word culture used all the time, and every time I see it, or nearly every time I say it, what does that mean? Can we define it, please? Because usually people talk about the arts as culture, and yes, the arts are culture, but the arts aren't all of culture. And in terms of meeting other cultures, so when we live in a culture, and we never see anything else, that culture is invisible to us. We can only actually see our own culture if we go elsewhere and we actually look back. So I'm going to talk about one particular incident, as it were, attending an orchestra camp, a kids' orchestra camp, ages 12 to 15 in Norway a number of years ago. And about 2 days before the performance, the lead string tutor gave a talk to the full orchestra. The notes. Don't play the notes, and it's not bad of you to do so. So he was teaching kids to do what we call air bowing, or faking it. So they're moving the bow the same as the person next to them. Their fingers are moving up and down, but they're not making any noise because they can't play the music well. And that is part of it's their duty to the group, actually, for the best possible performances. If you can't do it, don't do it. But still be there and play the pieces that you can. And I was watching this, and at the time I thought, Irish kids know how to do that. No one needs to explain it to them. And actually, in thinking about it again now, actually it's very relevant. The Arts Council commissioned a report, had not officially released recently, but I've read it on youth orchestra participation in Ireland. And we knew looking at it, there were lots and lots of voices missing in the research and the, how did you get on in youth orchestras, from young people still there to people who've been gone a long time. Primarily, we know that the voices are missing because we don't have basic fundamental music education delivered in our schools. Just tapping, clapping, singing. Most instrumental education has to be paid for by parents. Those parents have to buy instruments. They have to buy the fuel to drive their kids here, there, and the other place. They have to have the car. They have to have the free time in order to go to instrumental lessons, to musician classes, to concerts, to rehearsals. What actually occurred to me thinking about this actually is that also there might be missing voices of people, young people who turn up, they start taking part in an orchestra, they see the level of competence, they see themselves here, and they can't fake the difference, so they leave. So a question for me that has come from that experience in Norway with an orchestra, which has been facilitated through the European Orchestra Federation, is, are we failing honest young people in Ireland? And I have no idea, but it's actually a question that we're going to address in our youth participation programme, along with things like how do we get young people to feel okay socially in a group. Sometimes actually from the things that people you say about the great extra benefits of participating in youth orchestras, only the people who survive the system get that, and we don't necessarily help them to. So as part of sitting and looking at how someone talks about honesty to a Norwegian youth orchestra, we can do a lot better, and we can keep a lot more voices in. So secondly, I'm going to speak to sustainability. So I think there's a little bit of an elephant in the room here for me, because we're talking about European networks. And I have been on plenty of flights, and we have to stop that fairly much. If we were to meet our fair commitments under a 1.5 degree scenario, in Ireland we would need to be entirely carbon neutral by 2025, so that developing countries still have a chance to develop. And we're not going to stop doing that, but I think as part of European networking, we have to make every journey meaningful and useful. Generally speaking, we have to travel less often, more meaningfully, and travel differently. The infrastructure doesn't exist for us in Ireland to get a train all the way to Russia, not that we'd want to at the moment. But part of this is we have a proposal at the moment, an environmental study, which only makes, well, we could do it in Ireland, but really properly makes sense to do it at a European level, partly because we can get it funded, but partly because if we get the proposal and we do the project, the results of this gets disseminated internationally. So we're looking at the social impact versus resource usage for participation in youth orchestras. It may work for other art forms as well. Year one, we are thinking that we will look at the greenhouse gas and carbon emissions related with participation in a number of youth orchestras. So initially we were thinking urban versus rural, but also we might think of school versus community. And we'll get a sense for different youth orchestras, what are the energy and the pollution resources used in those. Year two, we will actually look at the social impact of that participation. So we'll actually look at, well, what difference does it mean participating in the arts to an individual, to society, and how much resources do we use? And in year 3, we're actually going to look at, I think it's called materials usage. So we'll look at, on the one hand, perhaps a handmade violin that can last hundreds of years and gives enormous amount of meaning, not merely to the people who play it, but the people who manage forests, the people who make the instrument, the people who teach the instrument, people who learn it, people who parade it as a professional, people who organise the teachers, people who organise concerts, and last but not least, the audience. So we can look at a handmade instrument, which happens very, very slow. We can also look at a plastic trombone. They're very accessible. They work. But we're talking about something that is probably produced from fracked gas, and we don't know really how long it lasts. I don't know. They work well. They're cheap. They're accessible. But when it's disposed, if it's just thrown away, it will be there for 5,000 to 10,000 years in the environment, decomposing, causing pollution. Or the alternative these days is that it goes to incineration, in which case it causes pollution now, and it also, the remains of it sit there for 5,000 to 10,000 years. So it makes sense to us really then to actually do this at a European level. I have the networks. I have gotten lots of planes, as I say, in order to get those networks, but in order to do this actual project on a European level or even on an entirely global level, no one needs to get on a plane. So we can do all that work, and we can have all that work done in different countries, and we can just distribute the work, and we can just deal with each other online. I would hope that when we have a resources versus social impact, that we will be able to compare it to something. I'm going to say something exceedingly cynical now. So when I'm rich, which is never, I want to commission some paintings, one of which will be a slightly sinking Venice with lots and lots of tourists in it, and will have big yellow numbered tags sticking out of their ears. Because I think that's what tourism is. It's part of an economic system that uses people for profit. And I think what the arts is actually is something different. So although I'm saying we need to stop using planes, in terms of the value of the arts, I absolutely think we have to keep travelling. And that will bring me on to my third European value, which is peace and conflict resolution, and the reason we should travel. So as part of European music networks for many, many years, I've been turning up and we're trying to discuss the long-term future, which really is not very long-term if we're thinking 20, 30 years. But I have been saying that if we do not deal with climate change, we will see war in Europe by mid-century again. And the reason we need to travel, and this is far too big a problem for the arts, but we are part of something, is that people in different countries are invested in each other. So if there are resources, water is a big problem at the moment. If Switzerland decides to dam the Rhine, there will be very, very big trouble. So we need to travel to create the social cohesion to actually cope with climate change. And we need social cohesion within countries and across countries. So I'm going to come back to culture again, and this is a very big statement, but it's something that we are part of, and it's something that is always in my mind as I work. As I said, I may have said, the International Music Council is situated in UNESCO in Paris. And UNESCO is the United Nations Education, Science and Cultural Organization. Yet again, I'm not quite sure what they mean by that. But it was founded as parts of the world looked in utter horror at what they had done and deciding not to do it again. So part of their founding statement, it's also on a fountain in their garden. It says, "Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defences of peace must be constructed." So I think our participation in European networks actually is part of that mission. And if we keep it in mind, we will do good things.